Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of a Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Hi, everybody.
Welcome everyone to our podcast, and in every episode we try to bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. It's all about helping you develop as a professional where you make the choices that affect you in your classroom for the betterment of your students, and we hope we are part of that journey for you and making it a good one. It's also about using the fullness of the Australian curriculum so that we're using every part of it that we can. And our motto, great teaching can never be packaged into a program. Welcome any newcomers, and especially to our Facebook group, which is a really good forum for staying up to date. And also you can stay up to date via our newsletter, which comes out once a week. If you'd like to get on that mailing list, go to the Q Learning website to the contact page. And today, Sharon, we are going to chat a little bit about our weekend. What did we do?
Oh, first of all, okay. Well, we've just had a little bit of a couple of days away, which has been tremendous. It's been busy and crazy, and it's been a nice time to what I call, that refresh and recharge our creative and active minds.
So we headed north on the road to Clare.
Yes, so up in the into the Clare Valley wine growing region and historical region. So one of the
I made a diversion to a little place called Mintaro, where
yes.
Picnic at Hanging Rock famously had a scene, and there's a hall there called Martindale Hall, and we visited that.
It's probably not a hall, it's actually a
mansion. Yeah.
A Georgian-style mansion, which is the largest in South Australia. Is that not true?
Better check on that. Do a fact check.
Oh, I know.
But it's an amazing thing. You drive out into the middle of nowhere, really, and then there's this amazing mansion just there, like with its own coach house and everything. So anyway, what do you think of it, Sharon?
Oh, well, the thing that really sprung into my mind as we were exploring that is many years ago as a young teacher, one of my wonderful mentors, Helen, really talked about the importance of really exploring and discovering and learning by going to lots of places to learn new things. So I really felt that that opportunity, one amongst many that we do, is, to go out and to learn more about things that we haven't necessarily explored. So going to Martindale Hall, I found fascinating in learning about the gentleman, Mr. Bowman, who first built, what motivated him to build it, how it was built. It was, as Phil said, it's, it's on farmland, so it's a long way out of town. It's a long way out of the city. So when it was built in the 1870s, it took a lot of people based there to construct this building and to get all of the building, a lot of those building supplies. Some came from England, but of course a lot of local stone was also used in building it. So learning about them, then the Mortlock family, which bought it about 10 years later, the role that they've played in South Australia's history.
Because there's a Mortlock Library, isn't there, in the city?
So over a span of 40 years, so in the 1870s to the early 1900s, the Mortlock family donated over £5 million worth of buildings, resources, instigated and initiated all of these things for South Australia. So I'm fascinated by people and loved learning more about those people and their motivations. And, of course, the house now, because the Mortlocks left the house to South Australia, it's still set up in the way that they had, with lots of artefacts from across the world, travels they'd been on. So
we really recommend people go and visit the hall, or you can actually see it on the film Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is amazing. And also there was a great book that you lent me recently, Sharon.
Actually, more than lent it to you, I think I might have bought it for you. But each year here in our city of Adelaide, we have the Adelaide Writers' Week as part of Adelaide Festival, and I had the wonderful opportunity to hear Richard Feidler speak about his latest book, The Golden Maze, which is a biography of Prague. So Phil has been completely immersed in Prague for the last
Well, it's not just Prague,
weeks.
It's also the whole history of the Czech Republic. And it goes way back to their very beginnings and how it was a really checkered history of, started off with very wonderful beginnings, but then there were lots of invasions. There was the Catholic-Protestant wars, there was the dominance by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, there was the Nazi invasion, followed by communism for so many years, and during all that time, they had to endure so much. There were some really amazing leaders that helped them, wonderful artists and singers who encouraged them in all those dark days. And now, fortunately, they have now come to democracy and freedom again, and have come through successfully. But it was a really interesting read. So thank you, Sharon, for purchasing that for me.
Oh, well, and now I'm starting to read it.
Yeah.
So, yes. So,
and going now on to key question 1, which is, Sharon, in schools that you've things that you'd like to talk about?
All right. So just quickly, because I realise we've already rambled quite a bit from our weekends, but in schools this week, one of the big things, because we're coming to the end of our first term in South Australian schools, I've been working with teachers to refresh their classroom libraries ready for the term 2 start, so that there are some books that are in their libraries that students are, have been doing lots of work with, but we want to bring in some new texts that might link to other subject areas or content areas, expand into some different authors and different topics. So this is always a great time of year towards the end of one part of a term. It's great to refresh and get ready for, and have students involved in that too, thinking about, what's coming up and what we're doing, and also selecting the read alouds for the following term. So what books are going to be the books that the teachers are going to intentionally bring to their students as read alouds over the next 10 weeks. So that's been big focus at this time. And that also has just had me thinking too about one of the principals that I'm working with said, I'd be really interested to know, you read a lot. I'd really love to have an insight into what it is that you're reading, almost on a daily basis. Now, I know on the podcast I sort of share each week a text that we're using, and through, we do love to read. So watch the Facebook space. I might just get into posting more of what I'm reading, both professionally and personally and in the world of children's books, because, of course, we just believe so powerfully in what texts, literature bring to us. We can learn so much about our world and ourselves and others, and we see those as a vital part of not just literacy teaching and learning, but just our own ongoing learning. Reading doesn't stop with school.
And we had some great feedback about the persuasive writing piece in our Facebook group.
Yeah,
and,
so watch Facebook posts for more on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love getting feedback and questions being asked, and what I'll try to do is, when we get those great questions, is make a Facebook post so that
we respond
we
to
can,
that.
give more information about that. So
great. All right, now on to our topic today, which is teaching readers and writers to share and reflect effectively, Sharon. What's the teaching struggle here?
All right, so for our readers and writers, we know that being able to share and reflect on what they are doing really helps them to learn more about the processes and about their thinking and about their achievements and successes and struggles that have occurred over that process. And as teachers, we actually want to know what those things are to help us plan and teach more effectively to the things that our students need. So I've often found it a real struggle to think about, how do I find out that information about students to help my teaching, but to also help them as learners, because we know that it's really through either talking or writing in a reflective way, that we can really better understand what it is that we do understand. Aidan Chambers talks about it, and one of the researchers talks about it, as it's our thinking and our understanding can only be transformed when we talk or write about it, and that it is a transformative process. And Richard Ellington talks about it, about talk in particular, so talk through sharing and reflecting, as being one of the most underutilised comprehension strategies that we have.
Yes, I think that's so true, isn't it, that the children really understand what they're doing. It really deepens their comprehension of what they're reading or they're writing through talking about it.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. So today I want to get quite practical about that, because, how we... So that's the struggle, I suppose, not how to be practical. Well, yes, my struggle was, how do we build that? Number one, how do we build it in, and how do we make it intentional? How do we get students speaking and writing, or how do we get readers and writers speaking and writing about it effectively, so that it is actually helping them to grow as readers and writers, and be part of this whole community of readers and writers.
So it's making it part of the routine, like when we talked about having a reading and a writing workshop, it's part of that routine, true?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. So we know that the power of adding, so we could run, a reading and writing workshop, but adding the opportunity, adding time for students to reflect and or share as part of that time is really critical for them to be making sense and understanding and catching their learnings of the day.
Not just reading and writing. I mean, we had Rob Vingerhoots talk about numeracy, maths.
Oh, yes.
And having that reflection and the share not always at the end of a session. It can be partway through. It can be at the start. So that was a really interesting podcast, that one, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. So, no, I'm not limiting sharing and reflecting to just reading and writing, but because we are talking well, actually today I am, because I think we can only reflect and share as well as the opportunities we are given to do that. So that was also part of my struggle, was I wanted students to reflect and share, but I didn't know the strategies for getting them to do that. I could say, okay, turn and talk, but if I didn't give some framework around that,
I see. Yep.
then
Yep.
yes, it's easy enough for children to turn and talk and, like we could possibly be doing right now, ramble or get distracted or not. We need to guide that thinking.
So that's the bit of gold in today's session. I think it's how we get the thinking guided,
yes,
to be able to do a successful turn and tell or whatever way we're going to share. So it's guiding that thinking, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So we can only talk, reflect, share, as well as we are being guided to do that.
Yeah. Otherwise, it is like a chatty ramble.
Yeah, yes. Do we need to think about that, Phil? No.
Do we need to be guided?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In fact, we do use those strategies. Anyway. So today,
let's unpack and drill down into it now.
Into some of those strategies. Now, just a couple of other things I was going to add to that is that as teacher, we will sometimes lead that share and reflect by the things that we notice. So we might be drawing out sometimes that we've noticed something that a student has done or a reader has done or a writer has done that we might want to share out with students so that they get to see the kinds of things that can be shared. So sometimes we'll do that as the teacher, open that up and model that. And of course, we're also modelling some of that in our own mini lessons that we are often sharing on our own learning processes and doing that think aloud.
I've also done it that when I ask a student to share, that I'm purposely getting the person that in the group that's going in the direction that I'm seeing is the most effective way. And by sharing with that one or two students who are doing that, then that's actually guiding the class in a certain direction. Is that what you're talking about too? Yep.
Yes. So it can be, well, we might choose someone who has done it in what we think is an effective way. But what we want to remember too is there isn't usually only ever one effective way.
That's true.
That there are
multiple.
There are multiple, and that's probably the biggest question. So that so there's two words that really had a huge impact on me in thinking more about effective sharing and reflecting, and they're two words that Aidan Chambers uses to open up the thinking and open up reflecting, particularly for readers. So he talked about this for readers, and he's written a book called just this. It's called Tell Me. So just those two words, tell me, opens up. Tell me, it opens up the thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. So tell me is will preface a whole lot of, and I'll talk about that a bit more as a strategy shortly, but those two words alone shift a share and reflect from I'm sharing and reflecting on one particular question or one closed, what did you read today? Well, that's a closed question. What did you write today? Tell me. Tell me, what were you successful? What strategy? Tell me what strategy you used today and how you used it. Tell me, and of course the tell me can link straight back in a day, so in a readers or writers workshop, can link straight back to the mini lesson that we've had. So tell me how you used or how it worked for you, the thing that I modelled or talked about in the mini lesson, tell me how that went for you. So that it's giving voice over to the thing that we've modelled or asked students to have a go at, to try out. So for that mini lesson or that workshop structure, that's how we can really link the share and
with
reflection back to
the mini lesson,
the very thing that we've been making explicit and that we're systematically having a go at.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so let's explore some of the strategies that I've found particularly useful. These aren't all of the strategies, but there are some that I use again and again for readers and writers. And they're strategies, as we talked about, that they're strategies to teach readers and writers how they can reflect and share in a way that's effective to them as learners and as part of
helping others.
Yeah. So opening up the thinking to let others see, because whenever anyone talks about how they did something or what they tried or what they discovered, that opens up more for all of us. So I'm talking a lot about oral sharing, so talk, and we talk about that in the 7 Timeless T's as thinkers talking.
I was going to say there's the connection to thinkers talking in our Timeless T's, of course, and this is right up that alley, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So reflection and share can definitely be talk. It can also be written.
Writing, yep.
And E.M. Forster has this great quote, "How can I know what I think until I see what I say?" And I think that's the critical part of this, is that talk and writing through that reflection, sharing process actually lets us in on our own thinking. So I know this for myself. As adults, we know this. We go, okay, all right, so we've read and heard information about Martindale Hall, and someone will say, oh, yeah, did you know? And you go, oh, yeah, I know that. I read that. But actually to articulate it, until I do, I really haven't anchored it and worked and been able to synthesise that into something that I can say. So I can regurgitate something, or I can go, but my new thought about that, or what I now understand that I can do that I couldn't do before, all of those ways of thinking are ways of us to really anchor thoughts, to get further than it just being something that landed in our head. To talk about or write about it is really the way to transform it into something that we understand.
Okay, it's about understanding, and it's about anchoring. It's about having a platform for further thinking, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And that sharing of it is really what helps, as we said, this is probably one of the most underutilised comprehension strategies. All right, so some of the strategies that we can use for reflecting and sharing for readers and writers. So here is one that's called the 3-2-1 comprehension strategy, and we can write about or discuss after reading. So three things you discovered. Two things you found interesting. One question or wondering I still have. So that's a little framework that we can use as a reflect. So reflect on and share in writing or discussion. 3 things you discovered, 3 things you found 2 things you found interesting, 1 question or wondering I still have. So that's a possible framework, a possible and an easy one for us to have as a as a way as a teacher where I can say, all right, as you're reading today, think about, or as you're listening today, I want you to think about the 3, 2, 1. Think about what you've discovered, what was interesting, what you're still wondering. So you'll notice that alone, that discovering, finding interesting and wondering is making the reader or the listener active.
I like the way you're giving these techniques or skills or strategies, and then you're telling us a place that we can use it in our teaching. That's fantastic, Sharon.
Yeah.
And also people who are writing these things down, look, we have actually written it all down for you. There is a resource on our Teachific site, and Sharon's in fact made it into, or encourages you to make it into a big book, A3 size, and
I call it a flip chart. So that it's so that these strategies can actually be. You can introduce these as strategies to your readers and writers, so to your thinkers, because this is really what it's about, is about giving strategies for thinking.
Yeah. If you look on the Teachific site, it's actually one of our new resources on there. It's called
Reflecting and Sharing.
Reflecting and Sharing. So have a look, folks. It's up there now. What's the next one?
All right. So I'm actually going through ones that are in this resource, but I thought there
are others, but
there are definitely others, and in fact, I've called this set 1, so that it just gives some choice and options for getting students thinking in new and powerful ways.
Great.
And organised ways, so that we don't feel like our thinking is just dropping into a never-ending bottomless ocean. All right. The next one is for discussing or writing about short stories or chapters. So retelling. So we often ask our students, well, we might, okay, tell about this, retell this short story or retell this chapter or give a summary of this. So what's a way to do this retell? So I've called this one, and this is for fiction, and I've called it a one-handed retell, because we can actually use our hand as a prompt to help us with the retell. And I want you to listen to the language, because that's intentional, the language that's used in this retell. So the palm of the hand can be my reminder that the title of the story or the chapter is this. Then my thumb can remind me, and I'll use language. So the story involves, and I can say, or the chapter, who and where. So the story involves these characters
and where is
in
it?
This place.
Mm-hmm. And that's on your thumb.
Yep.
Then
my pointer finger. The story or the chapter starts when. So I've used the word starts because our students will often lurch into the middle of something or the end of something, but it starts when, or it starts with this event. So it starts with.
Okay.
Then then my next finger that I'm pointing to, my
middle finger.
Mm-hmm. Then what happens?
All right.
Next.
The ring finger.
Ring finger, yes. Then, so what happens then?
Another then.
Yes.
Yep.
And there might be more thens after that.
So you could have a hand with more fingers on it.
Or not, just keep going with that one.
Okay.
But order of events. Yep. And finally, once I get to my little finger, the story or chapter ends when or with.
Okay, so it's a nice way of using your hand to remind you of those things.
Yes, just so quick prompt, one-handed, short story or chapter retell.
Nice. And you just use that in a variety of scenarios, yeah, or
What?
you know,
How do you mean?
well, when you're at the start of a lesson, when would you use this? What would be the time that you would like to, get the students using it?
Well, I wouldn't do it at the start of a lesson because I want them to do it in response to having heard or read a story, a short story or a chapter, and then they would be. So any of these are strategies for sharing and reflecting after you've read or written.
Of course,
So,
but you might at the start of the lesson say, "This is how we're going to share it." Would you? Or
any of these strategies, I need to teach how they work.
Yep.
So I would model how any of these work.
Good point.
So I can't just expect that I can throw up a chart and say, all right, so I want you to now reflect or share using this strategy.
In fact, it's a mini lesson.
So it is absolutely a mini lesson.
Yeah.
So I can model how that works for, use it with something we've done. So we might use it together as part of in modelling it. I might then say for this retell, I might model it with everybody, have everybody doing it. So together we are
doing the whole thing with our hands together, at the same time. Yep.
And I've used this from reception right through. I've used it through primary, secondary teachers may even find that it's a useful structure for because what it's really doing is using that language of, so this is the story I'm talking about. The title of the story or the chapter. Anyway, I won't go through it all again.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw in a little bit of a red herring there.
Yes, listen in, Phil.
I think it would have clarified a few things there. Anyway.
Okay. Well, let's just say you were reflecting on when to use it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave it there.
Yep.
Right, another strategy. Once again, these are all either for written or talking, for discussion or in writing. So this one is called Your Secrets of Success. So particularly, this is, really simple one. So for the mini lesson, for our reading or writing mini lesson, there is something that, a strategy or an action to take as a reader and a writer during that readers or writers workshop. And then the reflection and share is that what I've learned by that new skill or that new strategy. So my share, so either with a partner or with, actually remind me to just talk about that because I haven't, but I might turn to a partner and I'm going to share the secrets of my success that day. So I'm going to probably reference the very strategy or skill that was modelled during that mini lesson and how that played out for me. What that looked like. How was I successful with that today? But it can also expand out into, in my writing today, I was successful. This part was successful because. So it's really getting us to think about what are the successful, how have we been successful as a reader and writer, and what's the secret of that? What did I do? So that I'm actually articulating the what I did, what action I took
I like the title.
To be successful.
I love the title, Your Secret of Success. That's really hones in on it, doesn't it?
Yes. So I was successful at this. How did I do that?
Yeah.
So by articulating what I did, I'm articulating a good reader or good writer action.
Okay.
So I did something, and so of course the person then listening wow, is really hearing, oh, so that's how you did that. That may be something new for the listener. I might get someone I can have secrets of my success. I could share that to the whole class. As teacher, I might ask, so you spoke earlier about I might choose a child to share. I often, during writing time, especially during a writer's workshop, I'll see students doing something where I'll think, oh my goodness, look at that, look at what they've just done. How successful has that made their writing? And I might actually stop everybody if it's appropriate. I don't want to stop the writer's workshop too often, but I might want, if I know that that's going to be a great share for the whole class to learn from this, I might stop with that child and say, oh, can you just share the secret of your success right here, because I think everyone would love to hear that.
Yep.
So that becomes a term that we can use. Students love it. You know, the secret of my success. What did I do here?
Yeah.
They own it. It's what I did, but they absolutely love to share it.
Love that.
So
moving along.
So that can either be written or oral.
Yep.
So I might just do, so any of these things can also be a quick write in our reading or writer's notebook of what we did as a reader or writer. So sharing oral or written. The next one is actually called the writing reflection wheel. So really this is once again just a framework. It's 4 questions to prompt my thinking about my writing. And the 4 questions are, number 1, what were you trying to achieve? Number 2, where did you have your greatest success? Number 3, what did you learn? Number 4, what would you do next time? So,
and do they answer all 4 of those, or just do they pick one, or what's the story there, Sharon?
What's the story is you'll do whatever you know is right for your students at that time.
Oh, but the teacher would decide, not the student? Or?
No, I'm saying if we offer this as a reflection strategy, well, what's right to do is, if I'm thinking it's right to reflect on all 4, and it depends on how, once again, I need to model any of these. These can only be as good as what we model and how much time we give children. And by time, I mean how regularly we give our students, our readers and our writers the opportunity to think and talk and write about themselves as writers and readers, because that's what this really is what I'm doing as a reader and a writer and how effective that is. So, the 4, yes, I might reflect on all 4 at a time, but there might also be, I might not get past number 1 because there's so much there that I want to talk about.
Yeah. And one of those questions might be more suited to the actual skill or strategy you were teaching in the mini lesson.
Or that day's writing, depending on where I am in the process. So none of these things, I hope people note that the things that we talk about are not fixed. It is not a program of you will do this and then you'll do that and then you'll do this and then you'll do that, and that is how it has to be. This is it's teacher decision making.
I like the word nimble. It's very nimble teaching because it just responds to the needs and
responsive. It's responsive. So if I'm, of course, the biggest question in all of this, and I suppose I didn't even mention this in the struggle, is what is it that I want my students to be better at? If I want them to be better at understanding their own effectiveness of reading and writing processes and strategies, then I'm going to look for really powerful and strong sharing and reflection prompts and teach them how to do that.
Yeah, because that's your overall aim, isn't it?
Yes.
Your overall that's the biggie, or the big one.
Thank you.
All right.
We're not at home on our own here, Phil.
True.
Okay. All right. So another strategy here, and this is one that would be the first one that I bring at any time, especially when I'm talking with teachers about if I want to build in a good, solid share and reflection. This is the one I mention first, 99% of the time, and it's called turn and tell. So most of us will be very familiar with the strategy of turn and talk, so having a discussion, so that's really about discussion. Turn and tell is really defined as a strategy by you. So we're a pair. Phil, you have 60 seconds to turn and tell Sharon, and then I'll give some examples of those kinds of things that we can do. And then Sharon, you have 60 seconds to turn and tell Phil about your reading, writing today.
Yep.
So it's actually uninterrupted. It's not a discussion. It's purely the opportunity. It's really focused, intentional. I have to talk for 60. Now I say 60 seconds, but I generally say 60 to 90 seconds, depending on the age, depending on what we're doing. But this is what I want people to think about. If we add 2 lots of 60 seconds to the end of our independent reading or our reader's workshop or our writer's workshop, I'm adding 2 minutes to the end of that workshop. 2 minutes.
It's not a lot to ask.
No, because the biggest question or the most frequent question I get about where do we have time to get kids to share and reflect, I say it takes 2 minutes for every child to have shared and heard somebody share. And the power of that, it's an underutilised strategy, and I can do the same thing by using a quick write. At the end of readers or writers workshop, for 60 seconds or for 2 minutes. Quick write.
Yep.
And that is, but it should be an everyday thing.
Yep.
It isn't an every now and then thing, an everyday opportunity.
With turn and tell, I get the airwaves for 60 seconds.
Yes.
And you get the airwaves for 60 seconds.
Yes.
So we're guaranteed that space.
Yes,
and
we are.
Everyone gets a chance to talk.
Yeah.
And the talk is so critical to the learning.
Yes,
isn't it?
Yes. And so what do we get people to talk about?
Yeah.
So we can talk about, so Aidan Chambers is in his tell me, and so now you can hear where I've got turn and tell from, because it is about telling. I need one person at a time doing the telling, no interruption. So he says there are 4 great, and I use these again and again, and in fact you'll hear these come through in a moment. But tell me, what did you like about this story? What didn't you like about this story? What patterns did you notice in this story? What puzzled you about this story? So he talks about those as just 4, really good places to start. What I'll frequently do in getting students to, so the examples I'm giving at the moment are really just to do with reading and listening. So reading for myself or listening. And then I'll talk about writing. So now I'm using some different language here. Tell 2 plus things this text made you wonder. So don't just talk about one thing and then I'm done. Talk about 2 or more things that this text made you wonder. Because we might go, oh, how am I going to get more than one out in 60 seconds? 60 seconds is a long time to talk. So by having some of these, which is why I've put them on a chart for some prompts, we can have students choosing from these, or we might set those prompts beforehand.
Yeah.
So 2 plus things this text made you wonder. 2 plus new things you noticed in this text that you hadn't noticed before. So if we're rereading something, especially if I'm doing a big book again and I'm reading that aloud, what have you noticed this time that you've never noticed before? Turn and tell your partner. The 2 plus is intentional because it's saying there is everybody. I'm expecting, and I think everybody's got at least 2 in them. The plus means there is no ceiling. I can go further. So I'm always thinking it's open. So just by, even if I can't get to talk about all of those things at that time, it's already opened up to go, oh yeah, I was thinking about this and this and this, and right, I'll talk about this one and then I'll talk about that one and then so that it's really being active. It's really encouraging and supporting active thinking.
Yep.
Even before we do the talking, the sharing and the reflecting, we already need to have actions to take. And that's what our mini lessons are all about. It's about giving actions, then in the share and reflect, I've got actions to talk about.
Yep.
2 plus patterns you noticed, 2 plus questions you have, 2 plus things you discovered, 2 plus new things you now understand.
I'm thinking, Sharon, in the mini lesson, you could actually be talking about what the share is going to look like.
Yes, you can.
Because then before they go into their writing or their reading, they've got that in mind that, hey, this is how we're going to be sharing, so I've got to be ready for that. Yeah?
Yes, yeah. And sometimes I can model it through if in reading, through the read aloud. So I can, through the read aloud, we can practice this.
Oh, that's a bit of gold.
Thank you. Yes, it is. So we can practice it. From the read aloud, do a turn and tell. Yep. And then after doing our own reading, we can turn and tell.
We know exactly what that's going to look like because Mrs. Callen or Mrs. C did it in when she modelled the read aloud.
Yeah, but not only did she model it, we tried it with
her.
Well, with each other as we
in that mini lesson.
Yes. So at the end of that read aloud or that mini lesson, we had a chance to practice it with the text that we'd all heard.
That's a bit of gold, Sharon, that some teachers might think a mini lesson is just me doing, but it's often, or as much as we can make it, it's actually doing some tryouts of what we're going to do.
It's not often, it should be every time.
Every time.
So a mini lesson isn't just 2. Okay. If I'm just leaving it at 2, the with practice part, when do they get to do that with you?
And then they won't know what to do in the independent time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So often the with has played out in the small group, and I'll take reading as an example. We might say, well, the with plays out when I do the guided reading group with students. That gives every time I'm working with text with the class in a mini lesson should be their opportunity to do the thinking, the good reader strategy, the good reader thinking, the good reader action with me.
Yep.
So,
And what might that look like? Some students coming up with you or what do you...
no. So if I'm doing, sorry, that was a very blunt no.
No, I'm just clarifying for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I'm working with a big book,
Mm-hmm.
and so the text is seen, I can be doing the work of the reader with the teacher as we are reading that book.
Together with the group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
the whole group.
With is about being active. With is doing it, and we're doing it together as a class, and we're clarifying, what is this word? So this is, here we are, let's say, what do we do when we come to a word we don't know?
Mm.
I will have modelled so that as we continue reading, everybody can try that with me on the next word that we don't know. Or if it's a read aloud, what's the thinking? Let's say here, what two things did this text make you wonder?
Mm.
So as I'm reading, I will start modelling about what that looks like to wonder, what that sounds like to wonder. And as they continue to listen, they are doing the wondering for themselves, but they're doing it with me. They are, that's the with.
Yep.
We're doing it together so that when we do a share, go, this is what I was wondering. And someone else will go, that's interesting. In my turn into, I was wondering this. So then we get to hear what that sounds like for different students. We're learning from each other. We're all doing, so what we're all thinking, sometimes it might be the same, sometimes it might be different, but we can be doing that. If I'm listening, I'm doing the thinking right there and then, but as that part of the community, because we're all hearing the same thing.
I reckon what you've just been talking about is gold in how we teach, Sharon. It's going right down to the gold of what really great teaching is about. And if people have missed this, just go back a little bit in the podcast and just listen to that again, because it's a really key part. But we've diverged a bit. Let's go back to the sharing.
Okay.
And
right.
What's our next one?
All right, so turn and tell, I can use that same strategy for, I've just talked about that in reading, but we can use turn and tell as for writing.
Yep.
So turn and tell 2+ things you were trying to do today as a writer. 2+ new things you tried today that you haven't really tried before.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing, but it's I've got the opportunity to talk for that 60 or 90 seconds or however many seconds that you as teacher, put aside for that. But I get to talk about the actions I took as a writer and reflect on those and share. So
excellent.
Turn and tell, there we are again. Now, this one's called the Read Aloud Seesaw. And this works for fiction or non-fiction being read aloud, whereas the retell that I talked about before was for fiction. But for seesaw, read aloud seesaw, fiction or non-fiction. So after hearing something read aloud, in pairs, one person goes first, and they're the C. And they're going to share something that they recall from the read aloud, using words and phrases and expressions from the text. So this is recalling and using words, phrases, expressions. So this is really focusing in on the use of vocabulary from the text. The other person, saw, then shares something they recall using words, phrases and expressions from the text. And this continues, see, saw, so not a 60 seconds only. This is just going between each other, adding on and recalling things. So this is really about recalling. and using words, phrases and expressions from that. And we keep doing that until someone runs out of something to say.
Okay.
Or until the time is up
Yep.
that the class has been given to do this, in pairs. So it might be a 3-minute seesaw, and so we've got to go for as long as we can. Phil, you recall, then I recall, then you recall, then I recall. So it's really building on what we're remembering from text,
Yep.
but using words, phrases and expressions
Yep.
to, that's the key to it. So the focus of this one is really about recall.
Mm.
And it's just another way. So because I said we should have the opportunity to share and reflect every day as a reader and writer, either through talk and or writing. So that's why I'm bringing some different strategies. So it's not always just a turn and tell,
Yep.
or it isn't always a writing wheel, or it isn't always. So this is for recall, a read aloud seesaw.
So this selection of sharing and reflection strategies you've got here, Sharon,
Yes.
you'd mix them up a bit as according to your how you would like to use them in the classroom.
Well, I think I want to bring, I know I want to bring a range of sharing strategies
Yeah.
to my students.
But for instance, for say one of these in this booklet you've made up, would you use one for a week over, or would you?
Oh, well, I would use it as I see I need.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not putting any. It's not a program. I'm not putting
No,
a time
no,
frame
No.
on anything. I'm saying. So, say for example, something like turn and tell. I know that has been a sharing and reflection tool that some teachers have used now for. They might have used that for five weeks in a row for every day.
Yeah.
Turning and telling about different kinds of things.
Yes. Yep.
And so that's established the
Which you can go back to at any time because you've got that one as an established one,
Yes,
and then you can bring
yeah.
a new one in for a while, and then
yes,
go back to
or
the turn
add
and tell.
just as I always say here, I'm just adding to people's repertoires.
Yes.
There
Yep.
isn't just one way
Yeah.
of doing this. There are many ways. There's many ways to share and reflect, and you're also listening in to know how well the sharing and reflecting is going and what they need as to grow
Yep.
as sharers, so as readers and writers who are sharing and reflecting on their processes and actions and strategies.
Yep. So your assessing of the children, or as we would say, our transformative tracking, our assessing of the children continually informs us as to what types of strategies we need to be teaching in not just sharing and reflecting, but mini lessons, everything.
Yeah.
But today we're just talking about the sharing, reflecting
Yes.
strategy.
And of
strategies.
course, the share and reflection time in the written form, as a teacher, that gives me a whole lot of information. If I have a look at those reflections, that is guiding me.
it's part of your transformative tracking.
Yes,
Yeah. They're both linked.
it's that opportunity for me to be inside the thinking of the child,
It's gold.
of their reading and writing. So reflections in readers and writers' notebooks are like I want to have, here's probably something that I would say is I actually want to have at least one written reflection from my readers and writers every week.
Every week. Yeah. It's not a program, but
No.
we recommend.
Yeah. Well, it's a tool. It's anchoring. It's catching. But I also have a tremendous opportunity during that turn and tell, or during the seesaw, or the one-handed retell, through any of these, and students are sharing orally and reflecting orally, I can be listening. I can rove during those 60 seconds to listen in. There may be particular children that I'm going to focus in on particular days. There are, that's part of my roving conferences, as well as listening into what they're saying.
Anyway,
all right.
Have we got many to go?
Look, we've got, people can, I think that's probably
enough,
more than enough.
And people can go to the booklet and look at that.
Yes. So there's a couple more there.
By the way, folks, make them into an A3 booklet. So it's a nice big chart. We call it not a chart. We call it a
flip chart.
Flip chart. Yeah,
yes.
That's right. Okay. All right. So finally, Sharon?
No, I was going to just say that you'll often hear us also talking about the importance of the three selves. So for our students to be self-motivated, self-directed and self-regulated. Sharing and reflecting is critical to those three selves. So self-motivating, as I'm sharing about myself as a reader and a writer, that's really building self-motivation, because it's talking about like the one, the secret of my success. Like that's motivation I'm sharing what was successful here. Where is I want to be successful. What am I doing to be successful? So it's intrinsically linked to self-motivation, self-direction. So how I'm thinking about what I've done as a reader and writer is really part of my, my self-direction. These are actions that I'm taking, and so I'm taking from mini lessons, and then I'm sharing what I did with that is very self-directing. And then self-regulating, well, that's we're not saying that the reflection and share is the only time we self-regulate. The reflection and share is actually teaching students how to be self-regulating. So what kind of thinking they can be doing at any time as a reader and writer. So it's not just isolated to I only get to do this when the teacher gives me time to do this. These are actually processes, skills, strategies for being a self-regulating reader and writer. I'm thinking about what's working here, Well,
it's actually what good readers and good writers do, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're actually helping everyone be a good reader and a good writer.
Yes, at exactly where they are, and being so the share and reflect are actually quite systematic. It's not just a hit and miss random kind of thing going on.
You're not just throwing that in at the end. It's actually
it's got links,
highly planned.
And on my charts, if I've got good reader, good writer anchor charts, that for those of you who've listened to other podcasts will have heard us talk about, if my mini lesson is anchored on that good reader chart or my good writer chart, what's that action that we are taking as good readers and good writers, then I've immediately got things that I'm to reflect on.
Yeah.
So these aren't just processes that sit at the end of something and I've got to squeeze it in before the end of this lesson or the end of, before recess or before lunch. These are critical processes that we are building into. We are building in thinking, reflecting processes that we want them to then be able to, we're going to give time to articulate, because as we need it to be transformed from not just up in our head, yeah, I did that, but as soon as I articulate that, that's transformed now into, that's just not a thought now, that's an action.
Fantastic. Yep. All right. Well, I think, folks, we've come to the end of that particular section. Let's go on to key question 2. What is a good tool, Sharon, that you've used in the classrooms?
Just talked about it.
Yeah. Just did a whole
Yes.
podcast on it, the flip chart.
Yeah.
With those strategies. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So the tool, turn and tell as a tool, if there was, even without accessing any other strategies, just to know that as a tool, and that I've used with teachers and students in classrooms and is being used by the teachers and a lot of the Be Brave and Lead teachers that we're working with. That's been a big share to our sessions, has been how effective that strategy has been to their students. Just so highly effective that teachers have just did not realise the power, and that's not a put down to those teachers. It's not at all but to see that in action, it's given them completely different information about their students, but focused information. You know, it's being focused in what they're asking students to turn and tell about. It isn't just, okay, turn and tell. It's what is it that we are turning and telling about. So that as a tool, I just wanted to share that. That's my tool that, yes, used and wanted to bring to you. But
and we've actually had a couple of the teachers come on podcasts, and I'm sure we will, down the track, we'll have some more teachers from that project come on, and we'd love to hear them talk about their turn and tell, I'm sure. Question 3, what's a tantalising text that you've used in the classroom recently, Sharon?
Right. Now this week, I'm not giving you one text title. I'm giving you a type of text to go and chase up in your school. So as part of actually I didn't even share that out earlier on, that, of course, what's been big in the last week in schools was 2 amazing days with early career teachers. So we did 2 days around the 7 timeless T's with early career teachers in the Adelaide Hills. A 2-day intensive, incredible. But what I really asked teachers, the early career teachers, to go back and do in their schools is go and find the big books that might quite possibly be sitting in a library. Get those big books, go and search through those big books, bring them into your classroom and let them live in your classroom. So that, like, these are such rich texts for us to, like, we want eyes and minds on the page. So Don Holdaway was entirely intentional about bringing enlarged text to students because he was trying to replicate for students. Here we are. So this is in the 70s. Don Holdaway in his New Zealand classroom is wanting to he wants to replicate for students what it is to sit with somebody or to sit on a parent's lap and hear a story being read. So this is in the 70s. He's wanting to replicate that.
So what a parent's doing with their child and seeing the text with the parent together, he wants the whole class to be like that one child, seeing the text together and be able to have that same experience that the parent has with the child.
Yes. So the enlarged amazing. Text, and what there's 2 things I find completely amazing about that is in the 70s, Holdaway was saying, we need children being read to. And so the big book was to replicate that home reading and to have, and this is the other piece, the big book had text large enough. So it wasn't just that it was a bigger book. The big book had enlarged text. So the text was large enough for every child in the class sitting on the floor by that book to see it. So some of the big books we have now are big book in name because it's a picture book that we know that is in a bigger format, but the text isn't necessarily very large. Now, that doesn't take away from the joy and the love of having that big book in there, but when we want to have students' eyes on text, the big book lets all of us do that. As a child, I can do that with the teacher.
Well,
Here's the with.
I've been making my own big books and just printing off the text to be large enough. The songs that I'm teaching my little ones in reception grade 1 to...
In your music lessons?
In music lessons.
Yes.
I'll get the song and make the lyrics quite big so they can all see them from, even the person right at the back of the class. And they've been fantastic because we go back to those songs and we couldn't just turn the page back to the songs. We don't have, they're easy to find, easy to read. We all do it together. So
yes,
fantastic.
So the enlarged, once we have eyes on the page and eyes on text, the teaching we can do with that, the learning our students can do with that is fabulous. And of course on Teachific, one of our, the poetry that we've put up there.
There's a lot of poetry on Teachific.
Yes, but one of the big features of that is having the poem in a version that's suitable for the child to have a copy. But I've also tried to have each poem in larger format text so that can be photocopied. You can even make it larger. You can make it A3 size, but everything's been enlarged so that you've got that as enlarged text.
So you can put it onto an A3 chart.
Yeah, or larger.
Or even larger.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, back to the big books.
Yep.
Go on a big book hunt in your school. You will find I'm guessing you'll find some treasures because I haven't actually been into a school where we've gone to do that where we haven't found a lot of tremendous treasures. So to have those books in there, borrow them for your classroom, keep them there, read them, teach with them, reread them, explore them, make them available for your students so that they can read them, reread them. Read them by themselves or read them together in groups.
I love kids having a big book right down on the floor and 2 or 3 of them all lie over the book and they can all point to the text together and it's just wonderful to do that, not just have their own smaller book for independent reading, but to have a big book together as a group.
And so I won't say any more about that, but there will be a podcast about using big books and enlarged text because I think there's some things to revisit around that because the teaching and the learning we can do with enlarged text is so powerful. So anyway, I'll leave it there because that really is another
podcast,
really rich strategy that we can use and tool. Enlarged text as a tool brings so much to the teaching that we do. So there we go.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Sharon. And thanks everyone for listening with us today. It's been wonderful. Another great podcast. Sharon, thank you for all your input. You've done a magnificent job in getting ready for this. And I've already mentioned all the ways you can get in contact with us. But thank you again. And finally, the word teacher in another language. I thought I'd do the Czech language because I was reading that book on
Golden Maze.
The Czech history.
Yes.
Uchital is the word for teacher. Thank you, everyone, and bye for now.
Have a great week, everyone.
See you.
See you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.